So, Escape from New York. Jim, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's a fun movie. yeah, like
it's a great
fun
ending,
movie.
by the way.
Great ending, but I was kind of like at the ending because the president does seem relatively genuine.
He seems genuine to Snake, but he seems like he doesn't care about the others. But I will also push back a bit, though. It's like he's talking about like, oh, we lost. Like when Snake says like, oh, we lost a lot of people on the way. It's like they lost 3.
Yeah,
and one of them is Ernest Borgnine, 1 foot in the grave already. Like I don't know.
Yeah, it's not like he was actually their friends. You know what I mean?
That's another thing, too. I do feel like the Snake... I think it's perfectly in character for Snake to bring the president back and just, like, walk off and just not care. I think it's weird that this seems to be, in particular, what kind of sets him off. I think that seems out of character to me.
And if the tape was something that is supposed to benefit the whole of humanity and end this possible World War III that's happening, then you'd think he'd just be like, yeah, here's the tape. Sort it out. Goodbye.
Yeah, because that could still be in character, too. It's like, yeah, I still don't care, but here it is.
Yeah, it's just, it's an odd ending, but the movie's fun. It does feel a little slow and aimless.
It's very slow. It's very slow, and at times it's very aimless, yes.
Yeah, and I'm really thinking about that whole bit after he finds...
George Buckflower.
And then just wanders around almost getting eaten by cannibals and things, You're just like, why? Why is this happening?
Yeah, and that the action there's not a lot of action in this movie for it to be, it's sci-fi action classic or whatever. The action that we do get, especially in that portion of the film, is kind of lame. It's just like he shoots a few times and we're not even really sure who he's shooting at. It's just kind of like dark figures. And it's like the coolest thing he does is he shoots a hole in a cardboard wall and runs through it.
Yeah, well, or he also blows somebody's hand off, which is pretty cool too.
Again, this is not John Wick, okay? This is an action movie made, I think, by a director that really doesn't have a sensibility for action movies. I mean, I still think it's a good movie, but I don't think its strengths are its action. I think the strengths... In overall, this movie is greater than the sum of its parts. I think if you look at all these different things in the movie individually, it's like, oh, they're all these things that are like okay.
Yeah.
But then somehow it all together it works. And part of that's the strength of the premise, because as dumb as the premise is, it is a great premise. President is kidnapped. New York is a prison, or Manhattan is. And it's kind of a Die Hard scenario. Like a relatively normal guy has to go in against all these criminals, and of course, and it's not a true Die Hard scenario because for a number of reasons. But
you know what I don't understand though, and again I'm going to bring up Big Trouble in Little China because that's my favorite John Carpenter movie.
I will say that's a significantly better action film than this. I like the action in that movie is actually good.
Yeah, it is, and I can understand how something like Big Trouble in Little China becomes a cult classic because it's got like a weird story. It's got Kurt Russell doing actiony things, doing a very kind of Clint Eastwood in that as well.
John Wayne in that one. He's
John Wayne,
doing
sorry,
John
you're
Wayne,
right.
For sure.
It's got like kung fu stuff. It's got this magical spirituality thing. Mm-hmm. And it has like lots of puppets and monsters and things.
And a lot of humor, too. There's not really humor in Escape from New York.
Exactly.
At least not the same way.
But Escape from New York is so slow. The story isn't that complicated, and they managed to kind of drag it out over that hour and a half mark. And I'm not going to say it's a bad movie, but it's nowhere near as exciting or interesting as something like Big Trouble is. And I don't understand how Escape from New York is a cult classic as well. I mean, it's a neat movie. I'm not going to call it...
I would say, first of all, it's not really a cult classic because this movie did fairly well.
Really?
It's a $6 million budget. It made $50 million.
Okay.
That's a sizable hit. It's not Ghostbusters. It's not a blockbuster.
But it funded Carpenter's next movie.
Yeah, The Thing, which flopped miserably, of course, but yes.
Which I think is a better movie than Escape from New York.
The Thing is John Carpenter's best movie. I don't really think that's up for debate.
No, but and again, like I'm not even calling Escape from New York a bad movie. I'm just saying it's not exciting. It's just a bunch of characters kind of wandering around this desolate, destroyed world.
Right.
And
here's the thing. I agree with everything you said. Mm-hmm. It's not a very exciting movie. It is just these characters wandering around the world. Here's where the movie works. The character and the world. I think those two things are really great. I think Snake is a really compelling character. it's this throwback to the spaghetti western hero. It's the man of few words. His reputation precedes him.
Yeah.
He's the good guy. He's the hero here, but he doesn't really want to be. And I think Kurt Russell plays that well. I think that character is written well. I think they give him an iconic look too, which doesn't hurt. I mean, look at how much mileage Indiana Jones has gotten off that fucking fedora and the leather jacket. Like, the look is a huge part of that. So we have the character, which is really good, which is better than the movie. And we have the world, too, which is weirdly compelling. So I'm actually surprised how infrequently we've brought up Mad Max here. But this is a Mad Max world. This is not a literal Mad Max ripoff the way some of those Italian movies were, which Italy was also ripping off Escape from New York shortly after this, too, so don't worry. But this has these characters removed from the social order. I prefer these characters to Mad Max because Mad Max brings with it the weird performances. Yeah. They have the weird-looking characters. I'm okay with weird looks. I draw the line at weird performances.
Yeah, I feel you.
I don't like, oh, what a day, what a lovely day. I don't like that stuff. I like Romero. I like the weird hair, and he does that weird thing with his mouth at one point, and that's like he's otherwise a fairly normal person.
Yeah.
I like that the Duke of New York is just straight out of a blaxploitation movie. He's the Godfather of Harlem, basically, in the Fred Williamson movies. I kind of like these characters because as we see how the world functions outside of the usual order, and we're dropped into it from the outside, too, so we don't see all of it. We just catch glimpses here and there, and it's like, I guess there's still a functioning cab business. Or maybe he's just doing that for fun. I don't really know.
Well, I think part of what makes these characters interesting is that there is a very small spoken backstory, but the majority of it is unspoken. We do not learn their backstory. I mean, at Cabby at one point, he says, oh, I've been driving here for 30 years. And you're like, well, why are you still here? Did you commit a crime? What's happening? We just have to go with it, right? Just like Pliskin. He was in Leningrad where he had a tracker. Why was he in Leningrad? Why was he given a tracker? What's happening?
Yeah, I choose to believe that Cabby didn't commit a crime. He just refused to vacate when they turned New York into a prison. I think he loves New York too much.
Yeah, or again, and then you have, what's his name, Harold? Is that his name?
Brain, yeah.
When Pliskin's like, oh, long time no see. Yeah, we're old friends. You left me standing there on the curb. It's because of you I got arrested or whatever, Again, we're only getting part of the backstory, and the rest is left up to our imaginations, and we're wondering, well, how did this happen? How come we don't see this? Will we ever see this? Will we find the answers? That's part of what keeps us interested in the characters.
And then we don't find any of the answers, though. If that's... Because that was not necessarily on my mind when I was watching this, but if that's on your mind, were you disappointed by the lack of answers?
No. Well, this is one of those movies that I've seen every so often since I was a young kid. Because I know what the movie is and how it ends, I've never really been disappointed. I mean, as a kid, I might have been a little confused, but I've never been disappointed by this movie. But I'm wondering, if that is the way somebody could feel if they're watching this for the first time as like a 30-year-old, How come these things weren't fleshed out? Why am I asking these questions? I don't understand.
Well, in the way I view this movie, too, is I think this is just a very... I was almost said very fun, but I'm walking that back because honestly, it's not that fun.
No.
But it's an effective B-movie. It's a B-movie premise. Mm-hmm. It's done on a high-grade B-movie budget. They make the most of it. They do what they can with the matte paintings, with the effects. They never shoot above their means. It's a movie that lives up to its premise and executes its premise in a fairly satisfying way. I want to see a movie about a president who's kidnapped and taken into the Manhattan, and Manhattan is entirely a prison. I think the film pulls off all of the stuff with that really well. You could also, just going back to the ending, not the very end, but I'm talking specifically the moment Donald Pleasance, president of the United States, picks up an M16 and blows away the Duke of New York, okay? You could look at that as satisfying ending to a B movie. This is such a dumb movie, and sure, the president of the United States is going to pick up a gun and kill someone because that's just like, why not? Or you could look at that as being symbolic, especially because the Donald Pleasance performance Donald Pleasance is not camp in this movie. This isn't Halloween 5 Donald Pleasance. He's committed to the material. The scenes when he's being tortured, he plays that resolute, but terrified. And his exposure, even just in 24 hours, to that madness, to not just 80s New York, but to a hyper 80s New York, a New York populated by only criminals and Ernest Borgnine, his exposure to that, even the president of the United States, who is aiming for world peace, even that president can pick up an M16 and blow someone away. Is there something there? Probably. Do I really care that there's something there? Not really, because it's satisfying just to see the president of the United States pick up an M16 and shoot someone. Like, it's so dumb.
Yeah.
And it's fun in a dumb way.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there have been papers written about Escape from New York.
Well, yeah, especially because, like, Carpenter, he's not the social commentary master that someone like George Romero is, but he made They Live.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll have to look into it on another episode. Or not.